All right. Let's see here. Hang tight 1 second. All right. So I believe we're doing functional strategies, techniques, and exercises today. Is that correct? Make sure I'm on the right topic. I think next week we're doing functional fitness assessment. So slightly different order than we might actually do the live workshop if we were to do this in person. But I like this better coming off of what we did yesterday. So you actually can do this in any order you want. I wanted to try to teach it in a way that helps you learn the online course. So just so you know, because some people asked yesterday about the handout, and some people might be different people on today and different people watching the recording. The handout is available to you. I'll show you that when we get towards the end. I'm working through essentially what we call our functional aging specialist live workshop. So yesterday we did the functional aging training model. That's kind of where we start. It's the first section of a live workshop that we do. Typically the second section we do, so we went through the 4 cornerstones yesterday, the 2 pillars, the 7 key principles. And then typically at that point we take a bathroom break. So I hope you all did that yesterday after our webinar, right? Then we come back and we do functional fitness assessments because that fits best before lunch. But actually, I'd like to do the strategies and techniques typically, but a lot of times we don't want to get sweaty and exercising before lunch. So we save that for later in the day. So we're going to do functional fitness assessments next week. So this PowerPoint is available to you in the online course. So all the slides, don't feel like you have to write everything down. Obviously, I want you taking notes, take screenshots, whatever you want to do. You have these recordings as well. So we're jumping ahead to essentially the third part of our live workshop if you were to do this live in a day on a Saturday at a conference. So we're going to do functional strategies, techniques, and exercises today. We probably won't do a whole lot of movements, but a couple times I'll probably ask you to get up. So that's where we are starting today. Let me get this on full screen for you. Make sure I've admitted everybody, and we'll get rolling. Okay, so quick recap from yesterday. When you think about the 7 principles of functional aging training, then that should impact when we think about strategies and techniques and exercises. So you should start to see some of those principles and, you know, the cornerstones, those things start to come through. So it's not like we've invented new exercises, right? You probably know all the hundreds of different exercises there are, but now we're going to come at those from an approach of, well, how is this impacting function, right? Because in the end, we really want to impact function. So that's really how we're going to think about this. So we like to think there's a functional continuum from a more functional exercise to a less functional. Not, oh, well, this is a really good exercise because it's the most functional. This is a really bad exercise because it's not. Look, a arm curl exercise seated in a chair might be a lower functional exercise than a lunge with a curl with an overhead press, but it doesn't mean one's necessarily better than the other, right? And so it depends on its specific purpose and its goal and what your client needs. But we want to think about the more functional an exercise is, obviously tends to be more standing, more multi-plane, more complex. The less functional it is, typically it's going to be more of an isolation type movement. Right? If I'm seated doing an arm curl, well, that's an isolation type movement. It's less functional. My lower body doesn't even have to be engaged. I'm sitting in a chair, but it might serve a specific purpose for a specific client. So there's a broad continuum, right? As exercises get more and less functional, and certainly there's complexity involved. So the purpose of these techniques and strategies is to try to address as many impairment level factors as possible. Remember, we're trying to train a whole bunch of different things, and some exercises you'll be like, well, that's the same exercise, but now we're doing it for balance, and now we're doing it for strength, and now we're doing it for a cognitive challenge. So we might have a different strategy behind the specific exercise. So look at all the different starting positions we have. If you want to stand up for me, try some of these, right? Shoulder width is our normal athletic stance, right? Our feet are about shoulder width apart. Well, then we have a wider stance than that. So we can just call that a wide stance. That's slightly wider than shoulder width apart. And we could have a really wide stance, right? Which is probably about as wide as you could stand. Narrow stance is going to be more narrow than shoulder width or athletic stance, all the way into feet side by side. My feet are touching like I'm standing in a tiny little box. Semi-tandem, my feet are staggered. Tandem, my feet are heel toe. In line, so tandem is in line, but then in line, not tandem, would be in a straight line. One leg or single foot. A lunge stance, and there's different depths of lunges. A squat stance, there's certainly different depths of squat. There's lots of different starting stance positions. It's not just shoulder width apart. Half kneeling, full kneeling, prone, supine, quadruped, and of course, seated is a starting position. So we don't throw seated out. It's one of about 15 we have to choose from. Arm movements, this pretty well covers them all. We have bilateral, unilateral, alternating, reciprocating, and multidirectional. Multidirectional basically covers, all the different, things that aren't just your traditional bilateral and unilateral. Alternating and reciprocating. Alternating basically is right arm, okay, and then do your left arm. Or we might do all right arm, and then alternate, do all left arm. Reciprocating is when we're going back and forth, right? So both arms are moving, but they're moving opposing to one another. So if I'm doing a chest press exercise, for example, alternating would be right, left, right, left. Reciprocating would be right, left, right, left. They're both moving, right, in a reciprocating motion. A little bit more complex, a little more advanced for most people. We want to do all of these. Again, this isn't one's better than the other. It's one might challenge a different system differently. One might be more complex. One might be easier. One might be more focused on strength. One might be more focused on balance. One might be more focused on a cognitive challenge. Reciprocating for most people tends to be a little bit more difficult. And then multi-directional, we want to be doing lots of different arm movements in all sorts of different directions where arms are moving opposing to one another together, and obviously all sorts of directions. We also want to think about timing, speed, and rhythm and how we bring this in. We're not just doing the old-fashioned 2 sets of 10 or 3 sets of 12. We also have to do some timing, some speed, and some rhythm variations. Some exercises aren't sets and reps. How do we do marching and balance drills with one eye closed and certain stance patterns? Well, we might do them for time, not for 3 sets of 10, right? If I want you to walk on your tiptoes across the room, I'm not going to count that as 3 sets of 10, right? We'll do that for 20 seconds or 30 seconds or maybe 2 minutes. So slower to faster, we could do it on a beat or a cadence. We could even do it with a metronome or a timer. Certainly can do it on a verbal command. Could do it on a snap, a clap, a red light, green light, start, stop. We can play games with this. There's a lot of different options for timing, and there's lots of different gym timers and things we can use. Some of the benefits we get is, we can focus on speed. We're focusing on velocity or power. The whole focus of the exercise is stop fast, start fast, speed movements, stepping patterns. We can get more acceleration and more deceleration if we're doing starts and stops. This can typically require more challenging center of gravity control, when we're starting and stopping, and especially if it's on a cue like a snap or a clap or a red light, green light, or go, those sorts of things increase center of gravity control. It also increases cognitive demand because you're not just marching in place for 30 seconds, you're marching in place based on my cues, and you have to pay attention to that command. Same as if we're playing red light, green light. If I have you march across the room on your tiptoes, but on my command, green light, red light, you have to start and stop, that increases cognitive demand because now you're not just marching on your tiptoes, you're also listening for the red light and the green light. And I might even add, turn right, turn left, change directions, right? So again, that increases some cognitive demand because you're not just going through the motions. Even something as simple as standing and rocking on your feet, just swaying onto your tiptoes, back to your heels. It's fairly easy to do. But now if you do it on my command, every time I clap, a little bit more cognitive demand, a little bit more challenging center of gravity control because you have to do it to someone else's timing. Let me make sure I've admitted everybody here. There was somebody in the waiting room. Okay. Trunk muscle co-contraction. So before we get into some of the exercises, we always talk a little bit about abdominal bracing. We want to make sure that our clients, especially our clients that are new to exercise, are keeping their spine neutral. So abdominal bracing activates all 3 layers of the abdominal wall, plus the lumbar extensors. We want their core engaged, but we don't want it over engaged. We don't want them, contracting so hard through the core they can't breathe, that they can barely move because they're so braced, right? I'm ready to exercise, Dan. I'm contracted through the core, right? That's not that. We don't want them holding their breath, contracting like they're about to get punched in the stomach or something. So it's a bracing technique, and really we just want that to help protect their spine so that they're not essentially exercising while irritating their back. Yeah, so if we think of this visual, and this can be a good visual cue, we're trying to teach them, we want to keep your spine happy. We want you leaving or finishing your exercise session feeling better than when you started, not feeling like you aggravated or beat up your back the whole time, okay? Kelly, do you have a question? I see your hand up there. If you do, you can just type that in the chat. Maybe you did already and I didn't see it. Or you can turn your mic on too if you need to.
It's not related to this, so I'll hold it until the end.
Okay, cool. That's great. So this is just a nice visual representation. What we're trying to do is keep people from overly rotating their spine or putting their spine in a compromising position through exercise. So we want to watch for postural things and just cue people. And so when we teach abdominal bracing, we want to try not to teach abdominal hollowing. So this is not transverse abdominis training. This is not just suck in your belly button. This is basically just core engage. So it's really as simple as if I was going to poke you, you would kind of contract a little bit because like you kind of get a little bit shy or nervous about that, right? Or if somebody's going to tickle you, you tend to just co-contract those muscles just a little bit. So it's not a huge engagement. It's not a sucking in or a drawing in. It's just a slight engagement of the core that those muscles are activated. You should still be able to breathe, should still be able to move. It's not, I'm about to have a bowel movement, right? It's not literally, I'm so contracted I can't talk. It's not that. It's just a nice, easy, about 20 to 25% co-contraction. Some of the exercises we recommend you consider avoiding or modifying. Now, if they're working really well for you and your clients, we just say you should consider modifying them. Any sort of rotation away from the midline with resistance is something you should consider avoiding or modifying. Here's the challenge with that. If I'm going to do a cable rotation, I have to be able to move my hips. And so people make the mistake of sitting down in a chair and they're doing rotating movements. And this is about as far as I can go, me personally, before I need to move my hips, like my chair is turning. So I'm cheating, right? So if my chair doesn't move, as soon as I get to here, I can't go any farther without moving my chair or my hips, okay? So cable rotations can be problematic. Twisting med ball crunches, well, guess what we typically do? We sit on our butt on the floor, and we've all seen this. You can find this on YouTube. Goes on in boot camps all over the country. We sit on our butt, we take a medicine ball, and we rotate it and slam it to both sides. Well, guess what happens? You give somebody enough weight, they can rotate through that range of motion. They wonder why their back hurts when they leave. Well, you just forced your spine through a range of motion farther than its limits because you put weight on it. So if we want to do that, let's free up the hips. right? So make sure when you do twisting med ball movements, the hips can move freely so they're not locked. So twisting med ball throws standing, no problem, because now we can move our hips. Twisting med ball throws sitting, if you're sitting on your butt and throwing the medicine ball, which I see people do back and forth to each other, you're sitting on your hips, so they're not allowed to rotate. So that can aggravate the spine. Any sort of excessive spinal flexion, sit-ups can definitely be problematic. Unsupported crunches, so like laying off a bench. So the bench is here, but you're laying off of it, or laying off a stability ball. A weighted side bend, a lot of ab crunch machines cause excessive spinal flexion. Supermans, we like bird dogs a lot better. And then of course the Roman chair extension for sure can aggravate some people, where you're hanging over that thing and extending up, right? That can definitely cause some issues. We want to think about training the core three-dimensionally: sagittal plane, frontal plane, transverse plane. We want to make sure we're training the core in all three planes, and ideally, as much as possible, standing. So we don't have to do core work on the floor. We'll certainly do some core work on the floor, things like planks and bird dogs and bridges, but we can do lots of three-dimensional core training while standing. The body works as a unit. So if I have an issue at my hip, and this is pretty common, I would say, the older your clients get. So they get into their 70s or 75, 80, they've got an issue somewhere. It could be a postural issue. It could be a muscle imbalance. It could be, oh, my left knee has always bothered me. Somewhere in the chain, they've got some sort of an issue. Well, that is going to tend to compromise the whole system, right? So if my left shoulder lacks mobility, it may wind up really bothering my low back. So it's a shoulder issue, but I get pain in my back. I've got a knee issue, and it causes me to be tight in the hips. So we have to think about the entire body working from foot all the way up through our neck, that somewhere in the system, if I have, a worn out joint or an injury or a past, surgery, joint replacement, whatever it may be, it can tend to compromise the whole system of how I move. And so our goal is we want to help people move as well as possible. I don't want to encourage you to make the mistake of thinking we got to get our clients perfect, because that really shouldn't be the ultimate goal. There are going to be people that, if they've had 2 hip replacements, they may not have perfect knee stability. They may not have perfect lumbar spine stability. They might have some pain somewhere in their low back, but we want to get them moving as best as they possibly can, right? So it's not, oh, I want to get you back to 22 years old when you had no functional anatomy issues. No, our goal is to get them as best as possible for them, okay? So don't get hung up on, well, I can't get their posture completely 100%. Well, yeah, no, you're probably not going to get their posture completely 100% correct. You're going to get it as best as possible for them, and be aware of these misalignments, malalignments, things that we have. So we want to think about, how do I make someone as functional as possible, not just make them stronger in what we call dysfunctional fitness. So if I've got an imbalance in my hip, or I'm overly tight in my hamstrings, well, we don't want to train them to be even more dysfunctional that way, right? We want to always be improving the kinetic chain. Ideally, you don't want to be doing more harm by helping someone get even stronger in their postural imbalance, right? So if I'm overly tight in my chest, the last thing I need to do is make myself even stronger there, right? Like, let's get those muscles released. Let's strengthen my upper back, stretch out my chest before I just make that even more dysfunctional. I hope that makes sense. We always want to be thinking about weak links. We all have them, right? I've had 2 knee surgeries on my left knee. I know that's my weak link. And so I pay attention to it when I'm training, right? What can I do to train my left leg to make sure it's keeping up with my right leg, make sure I'm not 55-45 if I'm doing certain exercises. I don't want to be squatting 60% with the right side of my body because it's trying to compensate for the left, and being aware of that. Many clients now are coming in with what we call incomplete rehab syndrome. it's essentially a made up term. What it is I've had knee surgery and I got 6 physical therapy appointments. And I probably should have had 16 or 25 or maybe 20 before I even had the surgery, right? You put off the knee surgery for 2 to 3 years, and guess what happened? Your muscle strength declined, your range of motion declined. Then you had the knee surgery. And what did we do? We did 6 physical therapy appointments to get your range of motion to decent enough. We never got it back to where it was 2 years ago prior to, right? You start to see, and it's not physical therapist's fault. It's just the way the system's set up. It's like, oh, Burnett, you had a knee surgery, you get 6 physical therapy appointments because that's what the protocol says. There's no way we're going to get you back to where you were 2 years ago prior to your surgery, let alone fully recovered, right? And of course, that gets worse the more major the injury happens to be, right? So I tore my ACL, for example. It was 6 months of physical therapy. Well, unfortunately, a lot of people that have joint replacements don't get 6 months of physical therapy, even though they should. Or they don't know they should continue to pursue it and persist. They get to a certain marker, well, you got your range of motion back, so you're good. And they get dismissed at 12, 16 weeks. No way they got their functional strength back. We know there's alignment, anatomy issues. There's certainly different genetics. I mean, some people are more bow-legged than others. Some people are more knock-kneed. They got more valgus or varus stress on their joints. Some people, the genetics of their muscle tissue is different the way they recover. There are some issues. We have to realize aging musculoskeletal tissue is not the same, right? An 80-year-old's musculoskeletal tissue does not respond the same as a 40-year-old's or a 20-year-old's or a 10-year-old's. I mean, shoot, we can take 12 and 13-year-olds and subject them to all kinds of training, just really beat them up. And they'll come back the next day and be like, well, I'm fine, right? I mean, they recover so fast. Their growth hormone's so amazing. They sleep like 10 hours a night. They eat everything in sight. And they come back the next day. And I mean, you can train them super hard. They bounce back super quick. Can't quite do that to an 82-year-old, right? They might say, I think I need an extra day. I need the 48 hours to recover. In some cases, they might need 72 hours to recover from a really intense workout. So let's talk about some different exercises. I want you to absolutely try these. Normally, if we were live together, we'd get out some resistance bands and we would do these. So we'll just talk through a couple of these, and I've got some different movements. I'll ask you to stand up here in a little bit. For some of these, you don't need any equipment. So if you have a cable, a resistance band or a cable, you can train the frontal plane, the transverse plane, and the sagittal plane, and it all depends on how you're using the resistance band, right? So frontal plane is this side to side motion. So if I hold the cable and I just shuffle away from it, I'm training the frontal plane. I don't even have to move the cable in my hand. I just hold it. Now I can hold it out in front of me. I can hold it down at my side. I can hold it out to the side. So if I hold it straight out to the side, I'm a lot stronger through the shoulder. Not going to have an issue with my arm strength. I can probably hold 100 pounds or even more. And now as I shuffle, it's more of a core and hip exercise, right? I also could take the resistance band, literally loop it around me. If I have one of those bands, anchor point training bands, you can loop the whole band around yourself. So now it's not my arms, it's just my waist, it's my torso. And I shuffle. Again, it's a core strength and lower body frontal plane load, right? Side shuffle. Now, if I hold the resistance out in front of me, either in one hand or both hands, now where is the load? It's transverse plane, it's rotational, right? Because the load's coming from the side. If it's still coming from either my right or my left, either way, I'm holding it. Now, again, I can do the side shuffle. I can shuffle away from it. I'm getting a transverse or rotational plane force, okay? So I don't even have to move. I just shuffle away, right? I move this direction away. The force, what's it trying to do? It's trying to turn me, and I'm resisting that, right? I don't even have to move, and I'm getting that rotational force across my core. Now, I can do some other movements like pull-off presses where I'm literally pressing it in and out. Well, the farther out I press it, the more rotational force I get, right? The closer it is to my body, the less force I get, right? I can control it here. So that's a great exercise to try both single hand and double hand pull-off presses And you can do all sorts of variations, right? I can stir the pot while I'm doing that. I can stir the pot this direction. And whether the force is coming from my right or from my left, wherever I have my resistance band anchored, obviously that's the resistance I'm going to get in that direction, right? So I'm going to be pulled that way or pulled that way. And then sagittal plane, now we're looking at this direction, right? Now the band is going to be behind me, okay? So now I could be walking forward away from it. I could also be walking back towards it as it's pulling me backwards. I also could have it anchored out in front of me and I'm holding the band, and as I walk backwards, I'm getting more resistance, right? And of course, I could do pressing and pulling motions, which we'll get to next. So lots of different isometric exercises we can do with bands or cables that we really like. Remember, we don't want to just do concentric strength. We're going to, of course, get into pressing and rowing and twisting and turning, but all I have to do is hold and take the resistance that the band gives me, whether it's coming from my right or my left, whether it's coming from behind me or in front of me, just holding it and moving, I get all sorts of different planes of motion forces. And of course, if I'm doing it standing, I'm going to get a lot of this through my core. Okay. So try those out with a resistance band or a cable column. We've got several of these video-wise as well that you can watch in the course. I'll show you that when we get to the end. I want you guys to see the course. So here's some basic floor work that we can do. Simple core stuff. The bird dog is something we like a lot better than the Superman. It's a lot safer for our low back. It's a lot easier. You're down on all fours, just like it sounds, doing a bird dog pose. So you're basically facing the floor. So your head should be down. The mistake a lot of clients make is they want to look up at you. What are you trying to tell me to do? I want you to keep your neck neutral, so you have to be looking down at the ground, okay? And then we just raise one arm up overhead. Well, guess where a lot of our older adults, they're going to get to about here, right? So I'll back up a little bit. They're not going to be able to fully get their arm overhead without rotating away, right? They're going to be too tight through the shoulders, especially men. They're going to get to about here, and that's it. That's okay. What's it going to tell you? We probably need to work on some myofascial release, some shoulder massage, get your range of motion a little bit better so you can get your arm over your head. It's also going to tell you probably don't need to be doing any overhead pressing anytime soon because you can't even get your arm in a passive way over your head. So we'll do right arm, then we'll do left arm, typically 10 to 12 seconds. We might do 3 to 5 rounds each side. Then you do single leg. This one, you're really watching the lower spine. So typically I like to put my hands kind of on their low back and watch. Do they tilt? Do they rotate? Can they take their legs straight back behind them without rotating their hips? And for a lot of our older clients, they can't because they don't know how to fire their hamstring and their glute. They do know how to rotate their hips. So their first move is to turn, right? So I say, take your legs straight back, and what happens? Boom, they rotate to do it. So you want to watch for that. We don't go to single arm, single leg, you know, that opposite bird dog pose until they can master one arm and one leg. All right, then we flip over, lay down on your backside, and we do some bridges. So start with just 2 leg bridges, keep it simple. Knees should be at about 90 degrees. Arms up. That's a little bit more advanced. So now my arms are up off the floor. And then we can get into marching bridges and of course, single leg held bridges. And of course, there's other, you know, advanced movements we can do with the bridge. We could put a weight in one hand. There's, you know, different things we could do. We could hold a ball between our knees. There's a variety of different things we could do. Again, looking for about a 10 to 12 second hold. You really want to be careful with cervical issues and strain in the neck. So one of the challenges we have with some of our older clients, when they get down on the floor, guess what they can't do? They can't get their head on the floor because they have forward head posture. So stick a foam roller under their head, put a yoga block under their head, put a bolster under their head, get a pillow, foam pad, something, right? It's not a neck exercise. We're not down there trying to strain our neck. So make sure their head's comfortable. Then the other thing, when you get up in a bridge, right, and you're up in this bridge position, most of our older clients, we want them to keep their shoulders on the floor. This is not you're bridging on your head. right? Now I'm gonna get all this strain in my neck. So make sure they keep their shoulders on the floor and you're paying attention to any sort of neck issues. The other thing I always cue is I want you to lift your butt towards the ceiling, not stand up. The first thing they want to do is stand up, right? We're gonna get up into a bridge. So what do they want to do? They want to push really hard with their feet. If you see them sliding across the floor, if the first move of their bridge is they start to scoot across the floor, you know they're pushing with their feet, not lifting with their hips. And again, that's pretty normal because they don't know how to fire their glute complex to just lift their tush off the floor. So what do? They try to stand up. They literally try to push themselves across the floor. Well, where's that force going to go? It's going to go right to your neck because now your head is sliding across the floor. So watch for that. Planks. We love planks. You can do planks with 90-year-olds. Now, some planks might have to start on the wall, right? If somebody really has a lack of upper body strength or core strength or really has trouble getting down on the floor, they can plank on the wall for starts. Then they can progress to a table or a bench and then eventually down to the floor. And of course, they can start on the floor on their knees, not on their feet. And some older clients have trouble planking on their feet because they have such arthritic toes. So be aware of that. You might have to put something under their ankle. Knees are too easy. They don't want to plank on their knees, but their toes really won't let them be in that push-up plank position. So be ready to have a foam roll or a yoga block or something to put under their ankle. In fact, I had an 88-year-old client. She could do 20 push-ups on her toes, legit solid ones. But when she got to about 89, her toes were so arthritic and just so problematic in that position, you know, on her tiptoes, she couldn't do it anymore. And it kind of depressed her because she's like, doing push-ups on your knees is like for old ladies, right? She's like, I'm only 89. And I'm like, yeah, and you can do 20 legit ones. So I said, why don't we just stick a foam roll, you know, under your ankle? And then and that was like huge for her, right? She's like, wow, I never thought of that. That's so cool. I'm like, yeah, you can still do real push-ups. We'll just take your feet out of the equation. So sometimes you got to get creative about these plank positions. Sometimes we got to get creative about their hands too, right? They have trouble being on their hands, which of course forearms work. Sometimes we have to put something in their hand so they can be in this position as opposed to this position because they just don't have the wrist flexibility. But if you put them on a ball or on a pad or a cushion with their hand in this position, they can totally do it. So be mindful of that. We're big fans of doing planks for 20 to 30 seconds, not doing these 2-minute plank challenges. And we think you should progress your planks to be more challenging than just hold the regular old plank. So we've got knee taps here, toe taps wide, up, downs. I've got a video of an 82-year-old doing 12 plank up downs. He has no problem doing them. So if you can't do 12 plank up downs, then there's your challenge. So if 82-year-olds can do it, you should be able to. Side plank movements, obviously there's all sorts of different things we can do with side planks. We can even get resistance bands involved, dumbbells involved. You could do fly movements, arm movements, cable pulls, all sorts of stuff from the side plank position. You know, get creative with it. All right, go ahead and stand up for me. I can see you, so see if I can get where I can see all of you. There we go. Now you don't all have your cameras on. That's okay. You don't have to turn them on if you don't want to. So go ahead and stand up for me. Let's do some rowing. So we got our old school. Let's start. So I have here standing, half kneeling, and kneeling. Let's start standing. So shoulder width apart. Okay, so your feet are about the width of your shoulders. 2-arm rows. Now you don't have to have a resistance band. Just pretend you're pulling. Okay, so you're rowing 2 arms. Okay, so that's sagittal plane, right? Nothing too complex, your standard 2-arm row. As soon as we go to just 1-arm row, if you had the resistance, you would immediately notice, wait, I'm sagittal plane rowing, so sagittal plane for the arm and upper back, but I'm getting transverse core because I'm just doing one side. You have to counter that to keep from rotating, right? So we can add a transverse plane by doing single arm, okay? Now stay standing. Now I want you to stand with your feet side by side, okay? Keep rowing. Okay, I'm going to change your stances. You keep rowing, okay? So keep rowing, don't stop. Now I want you to go tandem stance, keep rowing. So you're changing your feet, okay? Now I want you to go inline stance, keep rowing. Ooh, somebody's got a band I can see. That's great, Sheila. So your inline stance. Now I want you in that inline stance to get into a lunge. So you're now lunging. And now let's make that lunge dynamic. So you're rowing and lunging at the same time. You can decide if you lunge first, then row, or if you're doing them just both at the same time. Keep lunging, and let's row with just your right arm. Keep that lunge going, but now you're just rowing with your right arm. And you're like, well, wait, which lunge do I do when I'm rowing with my right arm? Do both of them. So lunge with your right, lunge with your left. All right, you guys can take a break for a second. Now, I want you to come back. We're going to do feet a little bit wider than shoulder width apart. Okay, a little bit wider. And I want you to get on your tiptoes. So wide stance. So wide is wider than shoulder width. If you see my shoulders, this would be wide for me. On your tiptoes. And I want you to row with both arms. Stay on those tiptoes while you're rowing with both arms. And now I want you to go reciprocating rowing. Stay on your tiptoes, reciprocating rowing, wide stance. All right, that's great. So stay standing for me. You can see when you start to think about it, we barely even scratched the surface for how many different kinds of rows we could do, right? There's squat stances, there's side-by-side stances. I got you on your tiptoes wide. We did reciprocating. You could do all right arm. You can do lunges. You can make it dynamic. I can tell you to change your pattern as you're going. Of course, that makes it complex because you're like, wait, am I supposed to be stuck? Wait, am I switching to my right arm, my left? Am I stepping with my right? All of that can get a little bit more challenging. Now let's reverse it. We're going to do chest press. Okay. Now, if you don't have weight, this feels almost the same, right? Because now you're just pushing instead of pulling, but with no weight, it's the same. But they're basically mirror opposite of one another. So I'll try to give you different variations. So let's start standing. First thing I want you to think about, standing, just feet about shoulder width apart. Give me a couple of chest presses. Now, if you want to be maximally strong on the chest press standing, you have to split your feet. So you have to get into a big staggered stance or even a lunge stance, right? Because if I'm standing shoulder width apart and I start loading up 50, 60, 70 pounds, the limit is not my chest strength. The limit is my core strength. I'm literally being driven back by the weight. So I have to stagger my feet so my lower body can take that. And probably the heavier I go, the deeper I need to lunge down into that stance so I can take the weight. So if we want maximal chest strength on a standing chest press, we want to staggered into a semi-lunge stance. If we want balance, I want you to stand on your tiptoes with your feet as close together as you can get. Tiptoes, feet as close together as you can get. Press as much weight as you can, Sheila. We can see you, right? You can't press as much weight standing on your tiptoes. Now try it standing on one foot. Oh my goodness, I can't press much weight standing on one foot. You just took my other foot away. Now try it standing on no feet. No, don't try that. That won't work. Right? But you can go down to half kneeling. You can go down to kneeling. Right? As we change the stance, now it's not a chest exercise anymore, right? It's a balance, it's a core, it's something else. We can change it, okay? So lots of different things we can do with chest pressing. Let's do some punching and some power punching, okay? So for power punching, what we really want is a powerful step and explosion with that chest press, right? So now it's not just a one-arm chest press, it's a big step, big punch, like I'm hitting something hard and fast. So it's probably not going to be a heavy load. It's going to be a light load, high speed, right? So Sheila, I can see you working with a band. You wouldn't want the heaviest band for this because I want more speed, right? And you could even do power punching with no weight at all, right? It could just be a step and press, okay? Does that make sense to everybody? And of course, we could do power punching both hands at the same time if we wanted, right? So you step and explode, punch forward with both. So there's lots of different options, okay? You're starting to see how lots of different complexity, right? We can do standing shoulder width, standing close together, standing on our tiptoes, standing on one leg, lunging, squatting. Changes the exercise. You're like, well, what's the goal of the exercise? Well, it depends. Are you trying to train balance, core strength, upper body strength? The stance is going to change depending on what your goal is. Okay. All right, you guys can sit back down. Basically, pull downs, real similar to rows, except now we're anchored up overhead. So typically we're going to need a resistance band setup or a cable column setup that's overhead to allow us to do pull downs. Okay. Again, all the different same stances, single arm, double arm, reciprocating arms, all of it. A lot of times people ask, well, if I'm doing my right arm, should I stagger my stance on my left? Should I lunge with my left? Should I lunge with my right? Do all of it, right? Do both, right? We want to have same side and opposite side. So work both. One's not necessarily better than the other. Do both of them. One might be easier or more natural than the other, but let's do both. Same thing for pressing. Shoulder presses now. We certainly don't need resistance bands for shoulder presses. We could use dumbbells, kettlebells, right? Any sort of gravity implement. Chest press and rows, we have to have bands. As much as your clients want to do chest press standing with their dumbbells, sorry, it just doesn't work, right? It's comical, but it's not the way it works, right? I can't chest press dumbbells standing like this. As much as I might think I'm chest pressing, you're not, right? The force of the dumbbells going that direction, not this direction, okay? So chest press and rows, if we're doing them standing, have to be with cables or resistance bands. Obviously, if we lay down, then we could use dumbbells for chest press. If we tip over or bend over and do bent over rows, we can use dumbbells. But we have to use resistance bands. I've had clients over the years that they're like, oh yeah, I did all my standing chest press with 8-pound dumbbells. I'm like, that's not standing chest press, sorry. Then you try to explain to them how gravity works, right? Shoulder press, however, right, because the force we do want in the downward, we don't have to use resistance bands. You certainly can, but dumbbells work, kettlebells work, barbells work. You can use any sort of weighted implement, okay? And of course, we can do seated, we can do kneeling, half kneeling, all sorts of options on shoulder press. Make sure you use a wide variety. As soon as you go to half kneeling and kneeling, boy, we take the lower body strength away, we take the lower body base away. You half kneel or kneel when you're shoulder pressing, it takes a lot more hip and core strength because you don't have your base underneath you. So it can add a whole new challenge. All right. Boy, time goes fast. It's already 45 minutes in. Okay. Chopping and lifting sequences. We all know there's all sorts of different chopping patterns we can do, horizontal patterns, diagonal patterns. For many of them, we have to have cables or resistance bands. Again, our clients don't necessarily know this. They'll think they can do all their diagonal chops with a medicine ball, and you can't, right? If I want a downward force, I have to have a resistance band anchored up over my head. I have to have some sort of a cable column, right? A functional trainer to get a downward force. If I want a rotational horizontal force and I want to work on this movement, I need a resistance band or a cable. I can't just take a weight and do this, right? Because the weight forces that direction, okay? Now, I can throw medicine balls. That gives me a resistance to throw, okay? But other than that, I need a resistance band or a cable, okay? So you can use a core ball, a medicine ball, a kettlebell for lifting, right? If I want to do sagittal plane lifts or diagonal lifts, I can do that with a weighted implement. I can't do the downward chopping motions with a weighted implement. I'm doing the lifts again, okay? So just remember that. A lot of times our clients don't understand that. They'll be like, oh yeah, I did all my rotational work with a medicine ball because the cables were like, no, that's not how it works. You have to have a resistance band. And of course, we can do it seated on a stability ball. We can do it standing. We can do it standing with movement, shuffles and stepping patterns, lunging. And of course, we can do it half kneeling. Same thing with lifting movements. We can do those half kneeling, standing, lunging. So try some lunges with some core ball lifts or chops. Oops. A couple of you have your hands raised. Questions?
So Dan, I can't type in the chat I wanted to ask a couple of questions,
Go for it.
but it won't let me type in.
Huh, that's weird. I don't know why.
Okay, so anyway, in those things that you're describing, a lot of people are going to have knee replacements, hip replacements.
Sure.
So you're just not talking about that right now?
No, not specifically. Do you have a specific question about it?
Well, so yeah, so when I have 2 knee replacements and I was told not to kneel.
Okay.
And I also have a hip replacement, broken back, and I have to have my other hip replaced. So I try and do the best I can with the movements that I know. But
Sure.
if I have a client and I'm, don't take care of myself well, but we won't talk about that. So when I have a client, then that's different. I don't expect them to do what I would do.
Yeah. So, I mean, real quick on the knee replacement, some clients with knee replacements won't have issues with kneeling. They haven't been told not to kneel and they don't have pain with kneeling. Other clients will tolerate it if you give them a foam pad or what I call a healthy donut. So it's a big donut pad that's like a big circle. Other clients won't do it, right? They'll just say, I'm uncomfortable kneeling. I don't like kneeling. I've had 2 knee surgeries on my left knee. I don't like kneeling. So I would ask for, what are the other options? Well, I mean, let's do it on a stability ball. If we don't want to do it standing, you can do all of this standing, right? You don't have to do half kneeling. You don't have to do kneeling.
What do you mean by half kneeling?
So 1 knee down, 1 knee up.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So like kind of in a full lunge, but your knee's actually on the floor, right? So,
Gotcha.
So some people have had their right knee replaced. They're happy to half kneel on their left knee, right? Well, then we can do that. These are just different stance options for some of these, but you don't have to do them, right? And some clients won't be comfortable doing them. And so we might, if we want to do something where we're not standing, right? And say we're like, I want to take your lower body out of this and make this more challenging. Well, we could do it seated. We also could do it on a stability ball. We also could do it half kneeling. We also could do it kneeling. But sure, some clients, you're right, kneeling is going to be a no-go because of their knee replacement. Now, only about 7% of people over 65 have knee replacements. So that's only going to come up 1 out of 10 clients. But even some clients without knee replacements are going to be like, you know what, this kneeling stuff I don't really like. Oh, then fine, get rid of it. It's just another option, right? So on the core ball lifts here, seated on a stability ball, standing and lunge, those 3 out of 4 probably work for you. We just won't do the half kneeling one. That's fine. It's just another option.
So the other thing, and you may or may not want to address this, but so I teach this older adult class, and so the ladies are in their 80s, and most of them have disabilities from something, car accident or poor repair of a joint early or whatever. So they will ask me repeatedly to show them how to get off the floor, but they don't want to get down on the floor to have me show them how. They want me to get down on the floor, but they don't want to get down.
Right, sure.
And I think that's a really important move that they should be.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a common question we address in the live workshop. It's hard to do it here virtually, but here's my main comment. Everyone, regardless of age, everyone should be able to get down on the floor and get back up from the floor. Now, we always have pushback from clients at certain I mean, even 70-year-olds can be like, well, just don't ask me to get down on the floor. Like, well, at some point we're going to ask you to get down on the floor because you need to be able to get back up from the floor. I think we have to be somewhat respectful. Like, we're not going to get down on the floor 5 different times. You know, we'll only get down on the floor at the end of the session, and we're going to work then at a couple of exercises on the floor. And then we're going to work on how you get back up from the floor. And some people have to be taught, like, we're going to have a chair right here for you to climb up to the chair. So then you can get up, and the person's like, oh, that's not so bad. I can do that. Right. And then, you know, maybe 2 weeks later, we're like, hey, let's try it without the chair. What would this look like? I mean, you need to be able to do this. And so there are some clients that, oh man, they're just real stinkers. They just do not want to ever do it. And some of that is you have to build rapport and trust for them to trust you. Like, I will help you get up from the floor if that's what it takes. But this is a skill you need to have. This is a basic functional ability. It's not just an exercise. I'm not just doing this to punish you. Now, if we have 70 and 80-year-olds that are highly functional, we should be doing lots of getting up and down from the floor, right? Like Lance is 82, and we make him do get up exercises with dumbbells and burpees and all kinds of up downs. And it's not even a question. And there's no, like, Lance is not going to talk us into, oh, you're going to make me get down on the floor again, right? I mean, that would almost be silly. It'd be like me saying, you're not going to make me get down on the floor and exercise, are you? So it is a wide range of functional ability, right? I mean, when you see Gunther, one of my clients in his 80s, doing plank up downs on the floor, you would laugh about ever having the question about getting up from the floor, right? Because you're like, well, obviously he has no trouble getting down on the floor and getting up from the floor, right? So I always say we got to be pushing our clients to be their best, and getting down on the floor is part of that. Teaching them how to get up from the floor is part of that. But we also have to be mindful of that and realize it's not necessarily something they're excited about, you know? So it doesn't have to be in every single session, right? It's not like you don't want them dreading coming in every time because, oh, you're gonna make us get down on the floor again today, you know? But also making them realize it's important that you can get down on the floor, right? What happens if somebody kicks their TV remote under the couch? Who's gonna get it, right? I mean, you gotta be able to get down on the floor for stuff. You gotta be able to get down and look for stuff. What happens if your grandkids come over? You got to be able to get down on the floor and play with them. I mean, there are reasons why every once in a while. What happens if you fall at home? You're going to be able to get up from the floor? Do you know how? I mean, there's lots of reasons you got to be able to get up and down from the floor.
So do you have more, just one more quick thing? Is there
Go for it.
more issues around hips than there is with knees?
No, knee replacement is more common than hip. So when I say about 7% of folks over 60 have a knee replacement, hip, I think, is about 4 to 5%. So it's still a small number, but it's smaller than knee. So I just share that information because, and you guys received the training clients with joint replacements course. You can go through that at your leisure. There's some statistics in there. I even found it interesting because I think we over-assume joint replacements. We sort of have this, oh, well, they're 70, so they must have a hip or knee replaced. And that's not true at all. It's really not. So it's when we combine hip and knee together, it's about 1 out of 10 people have a joint replaced. So it's not as common as we think, though that's still fairly common. It's not like 1 out of 10 people are walking around with a triple bypass, you know. So, I mean, a joint replacement is becoming more and more common. And it's a tremendous thing. I think too often we think of it negatively, right? We think of it as a limitation, like, oh, they've had a knee replaced. I'm like, oh, they've had a knee replaced. They can do so much more without knee pain than perhaps what they were struggling with 2 years ago. In fact, orthopedists, I think, would tell you it's extended functional longevity for so many people, right? I mean, 40 years ago, you know, if you were 70 or 80 years old and dealing with degenerative arthritis in your hip or knee and there was nothing to do for you, you just suffered with it. You limped around or you hobbled around, you changed your gait. It was not a good thing. So joint replacements are a great thing in so many ways. So it's not to say like because you have a knee replacement, you're 100% good to go, right? I'm not saying that. It's not like you got a bionic knee and people joke about that. Oh, I got a brand new knee. Well, you'd rather keep your original knee if you could. You'd rather not have degenerative arthritis and have to have it replaced. But joint replacements are a tremendous thing. They give people much more ability to do things pain-free, assuming they go well and they have good physical therapy on the backside. So I do encourage you guys to check out that course when you're ready. It's a pretty hands-on course, gives some good tips and tricks and stats on joint replacement. So, all right, let me try to finish this up and then we'll do questions. We are almost done here. Lunges and squats, there's so many different, and you've already realized just from rows and chest press and shoulder press and lat pull down, we can be doing lunges and squats while we're doing all that other stuff, right? We don't have to just be lunging and squatting. There's so many different patterns. And then lunges we can make really interesting with multi-directional lunges, with reaching, with twisting, you know, overhead tilting, right? Rotation. There's just so many front reaches with a weight. There's just so many different things we can do. Air squat, basically your body weight squat. Spread the floor. So I'm squatting, and as I come up, I'm literally spreading the floor with my feet. Now, you want to do this on a surface that's not slick, because you don't want to do the splits. So if you got carpet, it works really well. You dig your feet in, right? Even outdoors on grass would work. On cement, pavement would work. Just make sure you're not on a, if you're on socks on a wood floor, don't do spread the floor squat. You'll wind up doing the splits. Sit to stand. It's interesting how many older clients can't squat. They don't know how to squat. Their first movement is to come forward, but they know how to sit in a chair. They know how to squat. They actually do know how to do it. How many of us go to sit in a chair and the first move we make is forward? No, we know, sit your butt back. Your butt goes back in the chair, right? It doesn't go forward. You'd miss the chair. So use a chair to teach people sometimes how to squat, and practice sit to stand. It's a functional exercise. Let's practice getting out of a chair. Then we can practice getting out of a chair faster. We can do power stands and take it to the next level. I know we are running out of time here. I think this is my last, yep, that's my last exercise slide. So mobility, agility, and gait training. Really encourage you when you get into the exercise movement patterns, if you haven't already, when you get into that next week, check out the different balance movements that I've got in there. All sorts of different patterns. We want to be training gait to be more flexible. What we see as people age is their gait pattern gets more and more and more the same. Right? We do the same things every day. We get up, we go downstairs, we make the coffee, we put the dog out in the backyard, we go get the paper, we go to the mailbox, we go to the grocery store. We do the same things all the time. We don't do obstacle courses. We're not climbing on jungle gyms. We're not running around the playground. We're not doing all the things that kids do when they develop a very adaptive gait pattern. In fact, we've stopped skipping, hopping, jumping, galloping, running years ago. We've stopped shuffling sideways, and if we've given up dancing and all these other things. So we want to try to reintroduce all these different things, right? Sleeping dog is something to step over or around. Steps, step up, step down, step swing through, step over, step sideways, all these different stepping obstacles. The parking curb did not jump out and trip you, Mrs. Jones. You didn't step over it, right? Well, I didn't realize it was going to be that tall. Well, we got to get better at stepping over tall parking blocks and stepping up and down curbs and, all of these things, right? We got to step wide. We got to step narrow. We got to be able to straddle something. We got to be able to tiptoe something. We got to be able to walk. We got to be able to take a couple steps backwards if I have to. We got to step and stop. We got to be able to walk like a dog taking a pee on a bush, right? We'd be like, well, when the heck would I ever do that? I don't know, but you got to be able to raise your leg. You got to be able to shuffle into a movie theater. You got to be able to shuffle in and out of a booth at a restaurant. Oh, can we not have a booth? Can we just have a table with chairs? Why do you ask for that? Well, because getting in and out of a booth is really hard if you don't have that gait pattern and you can't do a little side shuffle squat, right? You got to be able to do a side shuffle squat to get in and out of a booth, and that's not easy to do if you don't have that gait pattern. So we have to do all of these different things. These can be great little 3-4 minute warm-up drills. They can be great little 3 to 4 minute games at the end. Obstacle courses can be fun. There's just tons of things we can do, and this is barely scratching the surface, okay? And then if we want to throw some cognitive challenges into it, right? We can ask people to do all of these things while counting backwards from 10. No, that's pretty easy. Let's count backwards from 10 in Spanish. Some people might say, well, I don't do it in whatever other language you want. French, German, I don't care, right? Pick a language, right? Not your first language. All right, so that's pretty much all I've got for today. Instability training, because people usually ask this question, well, what about foam pads and BOSUs and stability balls and all the different crazy stuff we can use? You know, there's not a lot of research on it that shows it is effective for training balance. In fact, most of the research on it shows what it does is create a lot of instability, and it reduces your ability to produce force. And so while it makes us think we're training all kinds of different muscles, really what it's doing is reducing our ability to produce force. And for most of our older adults, we want their ability to produce force to go up, especially while they're standing on their feet. And so we're better off in most cases to have them do things standing on a solid surface, not standing on something unstable. Okay, so just be careful using too many crazy balance boards, foam pads, and BOSUs and stuff like that. So when we look at the foot position on the BOSU, we start to ask the question, what are we really doing here that's positive? And we realize we're doing a lot of ankle training, a lot of foot training, but we're not doing a whole lot else. All right, that's all I've got for today. Let me stop the share. You guys can ask questions. I do need to go pretty quick because I got other meetings here. I wanted to try to show you something real quick. See if I Has everyone been able to log into the online course? I wanted to make sure you're all logged in and able to see that. I was going to try to log into the course myself. See if I can do that.
No.
If you've not logged into the online course, I strongly encourage you. Let's see. I'm going to try to log in here real quick so you guys can see it. Let's see if I can. I own the course and I can never log in myself. So I have the same problem you guys have. Where's my password? So let me share screen here with you. Oh, here we go. Got it. So you can see what I see. Okay, so when you come in to the login on FAIeducation.com, you can also go to functionalaginginstitute.com, and then there's FAI login up in the corner. I'll show you that real quick here. So this is functionalaginginstitute.com. I happen to be on the webinar tab. FAI login is right here. Okay, that's where you can go to log in. I'm already logged in, so it took me right in. These are all our different courses available. You guys got access to training clients with joint replacements, so that should be available to you. You also got access to the functional aging group exercise specialist. Here's the functional aging specialist. When you click on that, right now you have access to module 1. Look at this great looking guy here. Oh my goodness. Module 1, 2, 3, and 4. Always freaks me out. Every time I come here, I'm like, oh, there's me looking at myself. And of course it's paused like on the dumb drunk face, right? That's always, my video guy must think that's hilarious, right? So at the very bottom, you come in on the dashboard, the very bottom right here, this is the PowerPoint from yesterday, today, next week, functional aging specialist live workshop. You have the PowerPoint anytime you want it, just grab it there. Of course, the manual for the course is here. Module 1, 2, 3, and 4 are available. You probably don't see all of these right now because you haven't passed part 1 quiz. Once you pass part 1 quiz, you'll see module 5, 6, 7A, 7B, and 8 open up. Okay. Once you pass part 2 quiz, then you'll see all of it. Okay. So if you haven't gotten module 1, 2, 3, and 4 completed and part 1 quiz done, that's really your homework between now and next week. Because when we get into next week, you're going to want to start having access to this next section. Okay. Now, module 4, I will tell you, is what we're going to do next week, health and functional fitness assessment. So if you don't get through it by next week's session when we meet again, no worries. This is for sure where you need to get to. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
So I can't get into any of that. There's an issue with, Andrea was working with me yesterday. There's an issue with something or other. We just can't get me logged in. I don't have ID or password or anything.
Okay. So Sally, easiest thing for us at the FAI side of it is to email us, contact@functionalaginginstitute.com. So it's just contact@functionalaginginstitute.com.
Don't go so fast. Contact.
That's a mouthful. Functionalaginginstitute.com. And just say, hey, I'm Sally. I bought the, functional aging specialist, cancer exercise specialist combo pack. I need help logging in. And Celia or Amanda will reply with your login, how to do it. They'll help walk you through it.
Okay.
Because obviously we got to get you logged in so you can get access to this. But yeah, any questions you have, if you're like, hey, I can't get the quiz to work, or I can't find the video that Dan mentioned, or whatever it is, email us, contact@functionalaginginstitute.com. Functionalaginginstitute.com, of course, is our website you go to find the login for this. But contact@functionalaginginstitute.com. Email us, Celia and Amanda will get back to you pretty quickly. Rarely do I respond, but every once in a while you might get me. So it's typically.
Can I ask a question?
Yep, go for it, Kim.
Sure. So I haven't logged in yet because I've been ridiculously preoccupied with election ogling. So, but I swear.
What a distraction, right? I get it.
I swear I'm gonna stop thinking about that at least 20% of the time. So where on here is the manual? So I understand we can rewatch the video, and then there is a manual to read connected with each of the modules. Can you just show that?
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so I'm in module 4, health and functional fitness assessment. As you scroll down, you'll see right here, lesson 1, module 4. This is the manual. You can click here to download it if you want. Some people don't like downloading lots of documents on their page, or you can read it here, right? If you just want to scroll through and read it here. I mean, to do that, I'd probably move down and then you can scroll through and read it. Most of the manuals are about 10 to 12 pages. Some are a little longer, some are a little shorter, depending on the module. So feel free to download them if you want, right? And then some modules have, like this one, we talk about the Bird Balance Scale. So we give it to you. You can download the assessment tools if you want. Okay, so there's a health history in here. And then make sure you keep scrolling down. The videos tend to be at the bottom. So there's two videos. Now, some modules, like if we look at module 2, I believe has no videos, okay? Because it's reading material. It's applied physiology of aging. Again, click here to download it if you want. That's really your preference. Some people want to print them. So if you want to print them, I'd encourage you to download them. Though I think you can even print it from here if you want. Okay, so then there's the manual. As you scroll down, you're like, oh, I'm done, right? That's it. There's no, and it tells you here there's 15 pages to this one, okay?
Okay, so the videos in here are embedded in the learning material, and they're always constant. Your live webinar is something else. If we want to see again, we go through the Facebook page. Is that correct?
Yes, unless you're a member. So if you're an FAI member, you would have the webinars tab available to you.
Clarify member. What makes a member?
$99 annual fee. So if you pay $99 to become an FAI member, you get access to all of our webinars, plus all of our conferences, all of our summits. There's about 200 presentations in here. In the webinar library, you can go through based on speaker. So there's all sorts of speakers. If you really like Dr. Evan Osar, or you think Dr. William Shang from Cornell is really cool, you can look up all of his. Guy Andrews, right? Some people really like his balance stuff. Guy Andrews, I will tell you, this guy is hilarious to me. The stuff he comes, balance on a budget, right? He's like, what can you do with plastic cups and ping pong balls, right? I mean, he's like $2 from Home Depot. People are always like, where'd you get that stuff? He's like, I went to Kmart, like 20 years ago, and I bought 10 ping pong. It's hilarious, the stuff. But he does some cool stuff. I love this one. Reindeer games, holiday balance and cognition drills for seniors. Oh my goodness. He comes up with the craziest stuff for winter holiday stuff. And anyway, so he's super popular. There's like 6 of his presentations here. So that's FAI membership. Sidetrack. So that is a $99 fee. But you can go to Facebook, Kim. On Facebook, we put about 1/3 of our webinars. So to keep membership valuable to people, we only put about 1/3 of them there. We're not going to put them all there. Of course, you can attend our webinars on Tuesday for free, but you have to be available at 1 Eastern. So Any other questions on this? I think it's pretty straightforward in here. Module 1, I think, is a manual only. The dashboard, this video is fairly useful. This is why I put it here. It's 1:41. It's basically me answering all the questions we get, right? Like, how do I complete the course? How do I do it? Where do I find like the questions you just asked him, like where are the manuals and the videos? That's probably here on this video too. So do watch that. I think the entire manual is here if you want just one manual document as well. So
What's the length? What's the size of the entire manual?
let's see if it tells me.
No need to hunt it down. That's fine.
No, it should say here at the bottom. No, this is just a 3-page intro. I think it's about 180 pages altogether, all total. Don't hold me on that. And the reason I always hesitate to answer is because it probably depends on your formatting for how you download it and print it. I know some printers can do it in 150 pages and others do it in 180. It probably depends on the size you want the page to format and all that stuff. So it's rated at about 5 hours of reading material, and it is about 5 hours of video content. So people always ask, well, how fast, how long does it take, right? It's going to take me weeks to do this. I'm like, it's not going to take you weeks if you spend 2 hours a day for the next 5. Look, if you spend as much time on this for 2 or 3 days as you have on the election the last 3 weeks, you'll knock this out in a few days, right? So it's really just depends on how much time and energy. When people do the live workshop, it's an 8-hour full day, right? And then I'm like, jump in the online course, rip through it in a couple hours, and you'll be done quick. So by the time you guys go through all these live sessions with me, you'll be more than 3/4 of the way through the course. So
I gotta go to work. Thank you very much.
I do too. I got to run too. So I will see you all next week. I think it's fitness assessments is next, but if it's a different topic, I'll be doing that one. So
Do you have time for one more quick question?
sure.
Because I don't want to lose this because I'm moving on in the material. For the MCTSIB,
Yeah.
if they fail eyes open on the foam, do we do closed eyes firm?
Yes. Great question.
Okay, but then we would not do closed eyes foam, obviously.
Right. So you start with the firm surfaces, right? So you do eyes open firm, eyes closed firm. You do those two first. Then if they fail eyes closed firm, the mistake sometimes people make is they're like, well, I don't go on. No, eyes open on an unstable surface, they might be able to do just fine. And then you're like, oh, they're very vision dependent, right? As soon as they close their eyes on a firm surface. So if they fail eyes closed on a firm surface, we know we don't need to do eyes closed on an unstable surface. So, and the video in there in module 4, when I do that with B, I go over that. So I show B doing it. Yeah.
You said you definitely don't go on to eyes closed foam.
Right.
But it wasn't clear to me because because she passed.
Right. Yeah, you do.
Nervous, but she passed it.
Yeah, she did. Yeah. So good. That's a great question. But yeah, you only don't go on to eyes closed unstable if they can't do eyes closed on a firm. Now, if they can't do eyes open on a firm, then we're pretty much done, right? Like obviously we're not going to go to eyes open on unstable. So I actually think B could have done eyes closed on an unstable surface with enough practice and if we'd given her enough attempts and built her confidence, but it was great for what we needed for the video. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Have a great week. We'll see you all next week.
You too. Bye.
Bye.